Hi there, John McAdams coming to you from the range out here in East Texas. In this video, I'm going to do some more velocity testing for you here today. Specifically, I'm going to test the velocity of 23 different loads from a variety of manufacturers in 6 different cartridges. Now, the unique thing about this video is in each case, I'm going to shoot this ammunition out of a rifle with a barrel length equivalent to what the manufacturer uses when they get their performance specifications for the ammo. For the most part, manufacturers are publishing their ammo velocities using a 24-inch long barrel. That means if you shoot that ammo out of a barrel that's 22 or 20 inches long, you're going to be getting velocities slower than advertised. So what can you expect with these cartridges from these manufacturers if you're using a barrel of the appropriate length? That's what we're going to test out here today. So we'll start with the 6.5 PRC. I have a Bergara Premier Divide rifle out here, 24-inch long barrel, and we will be shooting ammo from Nosler, Barnes, Hornady, and Federal. Next, we got the 270. I have a Browning A-Bolt, 24-inch long barrel. We'll be shooting all of that stuff out of. And I have ammo from Hornady, Remington, Federal, and Winchester. Next, we have the 7mm Remington Magnum. Got ammo from Federal, Hornady, and Winchester, and we'll be shooting that stuff out of a Remington Model 700 with a 24-inch long barrel. Next, we got the 300 Blackout. The 300 Blackout is unusual with these cartridges here in that most manufacturers use a 16-inch long barrel to publish their velocities with. So that's what I got out here today. I have an AR in this case, Diamondback AR, 16-inch long barrel. And we'll test out some Hornady Subsonic, Federal, Barnes, and Winchester. Those last 3 are all supersonic loads for the 300 Blackout. Next up is the 300 Rem Mag. For this one, I have a Ruger Hawkeye FTW Hunter, also 24-inch long barrel. And we'll be shooting Federal, Remington, Winchester, and Hornady ammo in it. And finally, we have the 4570. I have a somewhat unusual Marlin Model 1895 that has a 24-inch long barrel, and we'll use that for this Hornady Lever Evolution and Barnes VOR-TX ammo. As always, I will use a Garmin chronograph to measure those velocities. For each one of these, I will shoot a 3-shot group, measure all the velocities, let the barrel cool, then shoot the next load out of each rifle. So let's go ahead and get shooting. Okay, before we get started, realize I'm not going to show you a clip of the Garmin with every single load I tested in this video. Though I will show you a clip with the Garmin from every cartridge and every manufacturer I tested just to give you an idea of what was going on. I will give you a rundown of all my results at the end, both by cartridge and by manufacturer. And I didn't mention it earlier, but it was about 85 degrees Fahrenheit when I was shooting. Every rifle was unsuppressed. The 6.5 PRC rifle has a muzzle brake. Everything else just had a bare barrel. Okay, let's get started shooting. Okay, here are the results starting with the 6.5 PRC. As you can see, this rifle shot everything pretty close to advertised. The Precision Hunter ammo was a little slow, but just a little, and not enough to make a difference. The Nosler and Barnes ammo were a little fast, but all three loads were almost exactly dead on. Interestingly, the terminal Ascent ammo from Federal was over 100 feet per second, or nearly 4% faster than advertised. We'll talk more about the implications of this in a second. All in all, this was really good performance out of the 6.5 PRC, and this rifle was shooting almost everything very close to advertised. All right, next up we have the 270 Winchester. Things also performed very close to advertised with this rifle. Everything but the Hornady Precision Hunter ammo was almost right on the money, with less than 30 feet per second or less than 1% deviation from the advertised velocity. This was true across the board for the Hornady Superformance, Winchester PowerPoint, Remington Core Lock, and the Federal Power Shock loads. The Precision Hunter ammo was 119 feet per second slower than advertised on average, or around 4% slow. Once again, more on the implications of this in a minute. All right, next up we have the 7mm Remington Magnum. I only shot 3 loads from this rifle in this test, but as you can see, all of them were slower than advertised. Now, I did not include them in this particular test, but I've also chronographed 2 other loads in this same rifle recently as well. A 150 grain Barnes VOR-TX load and a 175 grain Remington Core Lock load. Both of those loads were also 100 to 200 feet per second slower than advertised. I've mentioned this in the past, but there are what people call quote-unquote fast rifle barrels and quote-unquote slow rifle barrels. Based on the results I've obtained with these 3 loads, plus the other 2 I shot outside this test, it sure does look like this particular Remington Model 700 has a quote-unquote slow barrel. The Winchester Expedition Big Game long range load with the 168 grain AccuBond long range bullet came pretty close to advertised, but it was still a little slow. However, the Hornady Precision Hunter and the Federal Power Shock loads were both over 100 feet per second slower than advertised. Once again, we'll talk more about the implications of that later in the video. All right, next up we have the 300 Blackout. Everything here was almost exactly on the money. Since this rifle has a slower advertised muzzle velocity than everything else I shot, some of those percentages are artificially inflated. Even so, we had a deviation of 51 feet per second or less from the advertised velocity with everything I shot in this test on average. Interestingly, the Hornady subsonic ammo was shooting the fastest over advertised. Now, the speed of sound does vary, and it depends on what the ambient temperature is. The speed of sound is basically 1,050 feet per second plus the ambient temperature in Fahrenheit. So the speed of sound does increase with temperature. It was about 85 degrees Fahrenheit when I was shooting this test, and that meant the speed of sound was around 1,144 feet per second. So this particular load was still subsonic, even though it was going faster than advertised. For reference, that ammo would still have been subsonic down to about 45 degrees Fahrenheit at that average velocity. Okay, 300 Win Mag. Once again, everything here very close to advertised. The Remington ammo was performing literally almost exactly as advertised, but even the Winchester PowerPoint and Federal Terminal Ascent loads were performing very close to expected. Same was true with both Hornady Precision Hunter loads. Okay, finally we have the 4570. The Hornady Lever Evolution ammo was both extremely consistent and going almost exactly as fast as advertised. The Barnes ammo was definitely an outlier though, and I'm not sure what was going on there. Percentage-wise, that was the largest change from advertised performance in the entire test. More on that in a second. On the whole, I shot 23 loads in this test. 10 were faster than advertised, 13 were slower than advertised. 13 of those loads, or about 56.5%, were delivering an average velocity within plus or minus 1% of advertised. 16 of those loads, or about 70%, were within plus or minus 2% of advertised. Here's the roll-up by manufacturer. As you can see, 2 out of 3 Barnes loads were very close to advertised, but then we had that one outlier with the Barnes 4570 ammo. This is really weird to me, especially considering how the Hornady load for the 4570 was performing almost dead on. maybe that rifle and that type of ammo don't mesh well together velocity-wise. Might just be an outlier with this particular batch or lot of Barnes 4570 ammo. Hard to know for sure, especially since I only had 2 loads to shoot for the 4570. All right, next we have the Nosler load. Almost exactly as advertised. I only had 1, but it was performing almost dead on. Same thing with both Remington core lock loads. There was a little bit more variation with the federal ammo, but with the exception of the 7mm Rem Mag load, which I think can be attributed to a quote-unquote slow barrel, all of these were actually going a little faster than advertised. Usually not by much, aside from that one 6.5 PRC terminal Ascent load. Now, the Winchester loads were all a tiny bit slower than advertised, but once again, not by much. All 4 loads deviated from advertised velocity by 55 feet per second or less. It was a mixed bag with the Hornady ammunition, though. The 270 Superformance, 4570 Lever Evolution, the 6.5 PRC Precision Hunter, and both 300 Win Mag Precision Hunter loads were all very close to advertised. Even the 300 Blackout subsonic load was only off by 51 feet per second, even though that was about a 5% deviation from advertised, since the advertised velocity is only 1,050 feet per second. Now, the 270 and 7 Rem Mag Precision Hunter loads were both considerably slower than advertised. And yes, interestingly, the 270 and 7 Rem Mag Precision Hunter ammo both had the same average velocity for me. That's not a typo. Now, you could potentially chalk up that 7 Rem Mag ammo to a slow barrel, like I mentioned earlier. That's not the case with the 270, though, which was very consistent and performing close to advertised with the other 4 loads I shot through it. Maybe this is an outlier, like I mentioned earlier with the Barnes 4570 ammo. Maybe this Hornady stuff just shot slow out of my rifle and it will be faster in someone else's 270. Maybe this is an issue related to the specific ammo lot I have for the 270 here, in the same vein like I discussed in my 7mm PRC velocity video. Once again, it is hard to know for sure exactly what the heck is going on here. Like I said, maybe I would get different results if I shot this same ammo in somebody else's 270 rifle, or maybe if I got a different lot of this Hornady 270 ammo and shot it in my same rifle. But at the same time, it is also worth asking, how big of an issue is it if your rifle is shooting a load 100 to 150 feet per second slower or faster than advertised? Well, let's dig into that. I calculated the trajectory of 4 different loads I tested in this video, and I compared the advertised velocity versus what I actually measured at the range with this stuff. The 6.5 PRC terminal Ascent load was 119 feet per second faster than advertised. The 270 Precision Hunter, 7mm Rem Mag Power Shock, and 7mm Rem Mag Precision Hunter loads were all over 100 feet per second slower than advertised. As you can see, it makes a difference, but not a gigantic difference. Yes, the faster load in each case has a flatter trajectory and more energy at all ranges. But look at those numbers closely. There was less than 1 inch of change in trajectory at 300 yards with each load. Those discrepancies do turn into bigger problems as the range increases, though, and in each case, we're either near or at the point where using an incorrect elevation hold at 500 yards based upon the wrong velocity is enough to potentially cause a miss to the vitals of an animal. It's less of an issue with the higher BC loads, though, but it does get worse with all of them as the range increases. So, like I said, 100 to 200 feet per second of change in velocity doesn't make a difference most of the time. If you shoot a deer at 175 or even 275 yards with this stuff, you probably won't even notice. But at 475, 575, 675 yards, yeah, it can make a big difference. Now, that's what 100 to 200 feet per second of change of velocity will do with these higher velocity loads out at several hundred yards. I would not worry about losing 100 to 200 feet per second of velocity for something like a 4570, where you're very unlikely to take a shot past 150 yards anyway. You could say the same thing about the 300 Blackout as well. Both are best utilized at shorter range, say 150 yards and closer for both. There will not be an appreciable difference in trajectory or retained energy due to any change that I observed in difference between actual versus advertised velocity for any of those loads, say at 150 yards and closer for both cartridges. And since that's the ranges I'd be using both cartridges at Anyway, don't even worry about it. Now, let's go back to the higher velocity stuff, the 270, 7 Rem Mag, 300 Win Mag, etc. Now, I would rather have that extra velocity than not, but it is most important to know or verify your velocity and or trajectory, whatever it is, so you can dial appropriately. Even if your rifle is shooting a load 200 feet per second slower than advertised, as long as you have verified your velocity or trajectory and you know this is what is going on with it, then it is a simple matter of holding or dialing appropriately at extended range. If that load is shooting accurately and consistently out of your rifle, and assuming you have it zeroed properly and you do your part as a shooter, there's no reason why you can't make a shot at extended range with it. Yes, it will have less retained energy as you go down range, and yes, that bullet will reach its minimum required velocity for expansion at a closer range than would be the case if it were starting off faster. But most of the time, it's still going to be more than capable of cleanly killing an animal out way farther than most people have any business shooting. Now, it's also important to note that your mileage may vary with these velocities I measured here. This is what I obtained out of my rifles with these particular loads, these particular lots of ammo under these conditions. Even if you take the exact same load and exact same lot of ammo, shoot it in a different rifle, under different conditions, you will get a little bit different results. Like I said, the lot makes a difference, and the specific rifle can make a difference. Furthermore, there will be shot-to-shot variation. Every shot is probably going to be a different velocity. Some may be faster than advertised, some may be slower, even with the same string. I will say, though, that in general, I observed here that published muzzle velocities are, for the most part, reasonably accurate, provided you are shooting that ammo in a rifle with the appropriate barrel length. But, especially if you're going to be shooting out past several hundred yards, it is still best to verify your velocities and or your trajectory at the range before you try and go hunting out past a couple hundred yards. But with that being said, you should expect performance pretty close to advertised with most factory ammo with the proper barrel length. Yes, there are outliers. Yes, I do recommend that you verify this stuff for yourself. But like I said, I was pleasantly surprised to see that most of this ammo was performing pretty darn close to advertised. And yes, you will lose velocity with shorter barrels. If a manufacturer advertised velocities with a 24-inch barrel, and most companies do, well, you'll probably be getting slower than expected velocities with a 22-inch barrel, for instance. How much of a loss in velocity can you expect? Well, I have a future video coming soon on that topic. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel right now and hit that like button. Just click on the thumbs up button and the red subscribe button below the video to make sure you don't miss out on any of my new videos about hunting gear reviews, cartridge comparisons, and more. I've also put links below the video to articles I've written about some of my favorite pieces of hunting gear like slings, ear protection, and scopes. For more detailed information on popular hunting cartridges and what they're best suited for, click on the link in the description below or go to huntingguns101.com to get a free ebook I have written on the best hunting calibers. Now I'm going to turn it over to you. What have your experiences been with muzzle velocities from factory ammo? What factory loads from what cartridges, what rifles, barrel lengths have you actually measured? What velocities have you obtained with that stuff? Let me know by leaving a comment on this video right now. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and good hunting.